Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Radish, and today we'll be going over the gear that I used on my 2020 thru hike of the Pacific Crest Trail. Now, if you're just tuning in, you can check out the first two of my gear review videos up here. So in the first one, we went over my cook and my sleep systems. In the second one, we went over my clothing, my pack, and my electronics. And this is the third and final of my gear review videos, where we'll be going over the gear that I used in the High Sierra, my medical and hygiene kits, and then the miscellaneous gear. Now, all of my gear is listed in more detail in my lighter pack page, which you can find right down below in the description of this video. And that'll have some additional things I won't talk about in this video, like the weights of each item. So feel free to check that out. And if you have any questions about anything in the video or on the lighter pack page, feel free to comment below, and I'll make sure to try to respond to all of those. But first up, we have the gear that I use specifically for the High Sierras. So this gear is going to be mostly meant for snow travel. So first up is the Kahtoola Microspikes. Now, I actually started off the trail with these from the beginning because I started the trail in mid-March, which is still pretty much winter. And I knew there was going to be heavy snow on the San Jacinto Mountains, the Big Bear Mountains, and the mountains of the LA Crest. So I wanted them from the beginning to make sure that I was safe, and I am incredibly happy that I had them with me. So those mountains can be incredibly treacherous. Even though it's the desert and you don't think there's going to be a lot of snow, the snowpack on those mountains can be really dangerous and not something to play around with. So I highly recommend, especially if you're starting early, carry those microspikes from the beginning, or at least send them to Paradise Valley Cafe so you can pick them up before you start going up into the San Jacinto Mountains. Because once you're up in the San Jacinto Mountains, there's really no turning back, and you're going to find yourself in a potentially fatal position there. So this year, if you guys are not familiar with it, there was a thru hiker who tragically passed away in the San Jacinto Mountains on Apache Peak. So I really just encourage you all to carry all the gear that you're going to need, especially when it's your first time running into snow on the PCT. It's not something to mess around with. You're not going to be invincible out there, and just be safe and look out for each other, and make sure you hike the dangerous sections with some other people so you can support each other. Now, with all of that being said, these microspikes worked great for me, both in the desert and in the High Sierras. At the end of the High Sierras, I sent them home and I didn't need them for the rest of the trail. I was debating before the trail if I was going to need some crampons, like the Kahtoola K10 style that is compatible with trail runners. I think they would have been fine and definitely made me feel a little more secure in both the desert mountains, honestly, and the High Sierras, but they weren't necessary. I was fine with the microspikes, so I'll still be carrying the microspikes in the future. But if I do get into some more heavy mountaineering, especially when it's not through hiking and I'm not going to have to carry the same gear for 6 months, I might invest in a pair of crampons, or at least the Kahtoola K10 style, which are compatible with trail runners, so you don't need a hard-soled boot. So again, I started with my microspikes at the Mexican border, and I carry them all the way to Mammoth, where I mailed them home before I went into Yosemite. I don't regret that. I definitely would have and could have used them on Sonora Pass after Yosemite National Park. So I might encourage people to hold on to them for one more stretch and send them home at Kennedy Meadows North. But definitely carry microspikes when you need them. Next up is my Ice Axe. I picked up my Ice Axe in Kennedy Meadows South. I used it until I got out of Kings Canyon National Park at Mammoth, and I sent it home. Just like the microspikes, I could have used it at the end of the next section when I got out of Yosemite National Park on Sonora Pass. So I probably could have sent it home then at Kennedy Meadows North, but I did fine with it. But again, something to consider, holding on to it until Sonora Pass at Kennedy Meadows North. So I carry the Camp USA Corsa Ice Axe. I really like this Ice Axe for thru hiking because it is incredibly lightweight. It definitely wasn't the most comfortable to hold in your hand for long periods of time. So as I'm living in the Pacific Northwest now, and I want to get more into mountaineering and do some summits of Hood and Adams, St. Helens, hopefully eventually Rainier. I'll probably invest in a more mountaineering geared ice axe, but for a through hike, this one's a fantastic option. I did not carry it in the desert at all. It would have been useful on the San Jacinto Mountains and in the Big Bear Mountains and on Baden-Powell, but that's again because I started super early in mid-March. Again, I didn't carry it then, so it's not a necessity. It wouldn't be a bad idea, especially if the desert got hit with a lot of snow that year. But if you are going to the Sierras with any amount of snowpack, I would highly encourage you to carry an ice axe. I entered the Sierras in mid-May, so it was pretty much still winter up there, and this ice axe was an absolute necessity. It became my best friend, but make sure you know how to use it before you go out there. Even if you're not super familiar with how to use an ice axe, watch some YouTube videos. They have some great instructional videos, and then go out to like a sledding hill near you, a ski hill near you, or if you don't live near the mountains, once you get to the PCT, the first time you encounter snow, find a place with safe runouts and practice self-arresting with that ice axe, because it's great to watch YouTube videos, but until you build up that muscle memory, if you fall, you can't you're not supposed to recall like what you learned online. Like your muscles should just react to what you have trained them to do. So make sure you do practice with that ice axe before you're, on top of Mount Whitney or on top of Forester Pass. But I'll keep using that ice axe if I do another long distance hike. But as I get more into mountaineering, I'll be investing in a slightly more durable and higher grade ice axe. I also had my bear can, the BV500 shipped to me at Kennedy Meadows South, and I carried that with me all the way through to Kennedy Meadows North. So that's the period where you legally need to have it with you. It's a pain in the ass. There's no way about getting around that. It's super heavy. It's like 2.5 pounds, and it's super bulky, not convenient, but it's the law, and we want to protect all of our cute black bears up in the mountains. So we don't want to get them used to eating human food and put them at risk of being put down. So carry your bear can with you. It sucks, but it's the right thing to do. So you can send that home at Kennedy Meadows North, and you won't need it for the rest of the trail if you don't want to have it. If you do end up camping inside of the 18-mile section where the PCT goes into Lassen National Park, you do need one for that night or two that you might spend in the park. Good way around this is just don't camp in the park, so you don't have to carry your bear can there. If you're worried about bears for the rest of the trail, you can look into getting an Ursack, which is like a Kevlar bag. It's supposed to be bear proof. Granted, I met a thru hiker who was using one in the Lake Tahoe area. He tied it to a tree at nighttime and woke up in the morning and the whole tree was gone. So nothing is totally bear proof, but that's a good option, and critters won't really chew through an Ursack. Another option is the OpSack. It's a scent-proof Ziploc bag. It is more scent-proof than the ScentLock Atom bag that I was using. So that's a good option, especially for your trash. A good tip that I stumbled upon for the bear can is a lot of packs, especially ultralight packs, are the roll down packs with one strap that goes over it on top. And so most people end up clipping their bear can on top of their pack. Now, if you keep your food in there, you're going to be super top heavy. It's going to hurt your shoulders. You're going to be off balance. And especially in the Sierras where you're, on a snowy traverse going up a pass with your ice axe, you want to make sure your balance is as good as possible. So what I did during the day is I kept my sleeping bag in my bear can on top of my pack. It's super light and it keeps my sleeping bag dry and waterproof. And then I'd keep my food at the bottom of my bag or just inside my pack in general, lower down, so I was better balanced. Because the only time you need your sleeping bag is when you've made camp at the end of the day, and that's also the only time your food actually needs to go into your bear can. So once I'd make camp in the Sierras, I would set up camp, take my food out, cook dinner, take my sleeping bag out and put it in my tent. And then once I was done with dinner, I would just put my food in my bear can for the night, seal it up. And then in the morning, I'd put my food back in my pack and put my sleeping bag in my bear can and keep hiking. So that's a good tip if it works for you. And then my last piece of Sierra gear, I didn't pick up until I actually got to Kennedy Meadows South and I realized what it was like camping on snow and how cold that could get. But I picked up a Mylar space blanket, super lightweight, and I actually would put it down underneath my sleeping pad, like inside of my tent though. So it acted as kind of like a second ground sheet and another like insulation between my body and the snow, which is sucking all the heat out of my body. So I carried that from Kennedy Meadows South till Lake Tahoe, and then I just threw it in the garbage. They're like $5. So if you do find yourself cold, that's another cheap and lightweight option to add some insulation to your setup. Next up is my medical and my repair kits. So these kind of combined into one kit over time because a lot of things in them are multi-purpose. Now I'm not going to go through every item because a lot of it is generic items like ibuprofen, Benadryl, Pepto. So check out my lighter pack page down below. You can see how much of each medical item I carried. I wouldn't change anything about my medical and repair setup. So what you see on my lighter pack page is exactly what I'll be carrying for my next hikes. The three things that I actually use out of it is Leukotape. I use that all the time, both for repairs and for blisters. I didn't carry around moleskin, I just would put Leukotape on that. That was probably my most used item in this kit. The second one is going to be Superglue. That's fantastic for any repairs that you have to do. So I had the fun experience of both of my trekking poles breaking up on the San Jacinto Mountains in the snow. I was not prepared for that much snow. So great memories on Fuller Ridge of self-arresting with a trekking pole and having that snap in half. And I think the day before I was post-holing up near the summit of San Jacinto and I fell forward in the snow, but my pole did not, and it snapped in half too. So I was able to repair those with Superglue until I could order a new set of poles, which I'll talk about in a minute actually. But Superglue was an important thing for me to have. And then the last item I used was a needle. So I had to repair some items on my pack. So if you're not familiar with what went wrong with my pack, please check that out up here where I go over the failures with the Z-Packs backpack. But that was an important thing to have, and also you could use it to pop blisters if they got big enough, like the one that I had when I wore the same trail runners for about 750 miles got. So that being said, those are the only three items I actually used the entire 6 months out of my medical and repair kits. But that's kind of the idea. Like, you don't want to end up using anything in your medical kits, but you have it just in case. So I think the list I have below is whittled down enough that it's just the essentials. But I think they're essential enough that I'll keep carrying them even though I didn't happen to have to use them on this trip. Next up is my hygiene kit. So same kind of thing as my medical and repair kits. I'm not going to go through every item on here because a lot of them are self-explanatory. I really wouldn't change much about what you'll find on my lighter pack page below. Three things I do want to point out on it that changed throughout the trip was one, my bidet trowel system. So originally I had planned on only using a bidet and really not carrying toilet paper. So I had just like a small rubber bidet spout that you could stick into a smart water bottle and use that. I found that I did use it, but I still ended up wanting toilet paper as well. The bidet is definitely like nice to keep you like clean and fresh. I didn't find it worked as like the sole the sole piece of gear that you would need out there, especially for the desert when like water is your most important resource. A water-based bidet is not going to be necessarily the best thing to rely on. So I ended up getting rid of my bidet when I entered the Sierra Nevadas, and I would probably hike with it again if I wasn't doing any more desert portions. But if I'm hiking the desert, it honestly just wasn't worth it to carry it. So I'll be carrying toilet paper in the future. But the bidet is nice to have. It just takes a lot of getting used to, and I would not rely on it solely. The next two items I did not start out the trail with but quickly found out I needed them. The first being sunscreen. For some reason, I was not thinking I would need sunscreen in the Southern California desert. I guess I was just really ready for a tan. That's how I got my trail name Radish. Literally on the second day, super sunburnt. So I carried sunscreen with me the first time I got to Trail Town at Mount Laguna, and I carried it with me all the way through the Sierras until I think like Mount Shasta, halfway through Northern California. So definitely recommend it for the desert. Definitely recommend it for the Sierra Nevadas even more because the snow reflects all that sun up into your face, and you're at higher altitudes, so the air is a little bit thinner, so the sun kind of like penetrates you a lot more. And Northern California is just, it's really hot and sunny. So again, I used it there too, but I didn't feel that I needed it for Oregon or Washington. What I did need for Oregon and Washington is Deet, which I did not start the trail with because again, I didn't think I needed it. I thought I could withstand mosquitoes. I was used to the mosquitoes in the Midwest where I grew up, and those are not the mosquitoes in the mountains out here. I picked up like a natural bug spray, like made with all these different essential oils. It smelled really great. It was my like trail cologne for a while, but it was not doing the job. And I also at some point thought that it was just bear marinade that I was putting on before bedtime. So once I got to Oregon, I picked up 99.9% Deet, and I used it almost every single day in Oregon, and a couple days in Washington. But if you are hiking anywhere during the snow melt season, I highly recommend carrying Deet with you. I know it's not necessarily the nicest chemical for your bodies or for the earth, but when you're being attacked by a black cloud of mosquitoes and you want to pull your hair out and just jump in the nearest lake and hide underwater, Deet is a great thing to have with you. So that kind of wraps up my hygiene kit. Again, you can find more detail about all the stuff that I carried with me down in my lighter pack page, and I'll be carrying that same setup that you see on that page in future hikes. So my last section of gear is going to be the miscellaneous gear that I couldn't find another category to put it in. So a lot of stuff on this list is just like essentials that you have to carry. So like a wallet, you need to carry a wallet. I carried cash with me. I think I always tried to have between $100 and $200 in cash with me. Most places take credit card along the trail, but especially if you're hitchhiking, which you will be on the PCT, it's really nice to offer whoever's picking you up, especially if they're going out of their way, or if it's a trail angel who's coming out like only to pick you up from the trail and take you back to their town. It's really nice to offer them whatever you can afford, whether that's, you know, $3 or $20, depending on the length that they have to go and get you. It's a really nice gesture. A lot of trail angels honestly won't even take your money, but it's, I think, really important to offer it, and a lot of that money just goes back to help future hikers. So you're really just paying it forward so that that trail angel can continue to do what they're doing for you for future through hikers. So pay it forward and offer a little bit of money if you can afford to. I also carried my debit card, my credit card, my ID. I carried my passport thinking I was going to be able to get into Canada, but because of COVID, that was a useless item that I carried the entire 6 months. And then something that I think is important is also just carrying your health insurance card. First off, I recommend having some sort of health insurance for the PCT, whether that's just a travel insurance that you get, especially if you're an international hiker. Look at like Nomad or something like that and get some coverage while you're out here, because the American healthcare system is super expensive and just not affordable at all, especially if you don't have any healthcare coverage whatsoever. So make sure you get something, and make sure you carry around that card with you, so when you go into a small remote mountain town and you need to go to the clinic, you can make that process as easy and quick for you as possible. Make sure you're also carrying your permits with you, so carry your PCTA permit with you, or it looks like they're not going to be issuing PCTA permits for the 2021 through hiking season due to COVID, so make sure you're carrying your local wilderness permits with you that you get in town or at your walk-up permit stations. For the entire state of California, make sure you're carrying your California fire permit with you, and make sure you fill out and pass the test online and print that out. And then if you do plan on entering Canada, make sure you carry that Canadian entry permit with you as well. So some mistake that some folks make when they go out on trail is they see like, don't apply for your permit 6 months until you are going to use it. So some people, like in the middle of the trail, start filling out their permit, and at that point it's really sometimes too late. So you can fill it out before you go on your through hike. I filled mine out I think in February or something, and it was still valid throughout the year. So don't feel that you need to fill that permit out 6 months exactly from when you'll be entering Canada. You can fill it out before you actually go into the backcountry. Next, I carried my prescription glasses and prescription polarized sunglasses. I highly recommend having a decent pair of sunglasses for any snow travel that you'll be doing, because the snow is incredibly blinding. So whether they're polarized or not, you can see a couple different debates on that, because polarized sunglasses tend to filter out any of the sheen you'll see on like ice, so you won't see like super reflective ice as much. So sometimes when you're doing mountaineering, you actually do want to see that. So sometimes people don't get polarized sunglasses for that reason when they're doing mountaineering. But find a good pair of sunglasses that are actually going to protect your eyes from the UV rays, and they're not just tinted black. I carried the Gerber Paraframe TI knife with me. I honestly really only use it to like cut cheese and vegetables when I was cooking. I didn't use it for self-defense ever. In the beginning, it honestly made me feel more comfortable to have it with me in my pocket when I was hitchhiking, but I never had a bad experience hitchhiking. The worst experience I had, honestly, was when a guy who picked me up on the side of the road asked if I wanted a beer as we started driving, and I said, "No thanks, I'm good." And he said, "Great, can you hand me one?" And at that point, little concerned, but never was anyone aggressive, hostile, never did I fear for my safety. I'll still carry the knife in the future just because it's good to have it for, you know, gear failures or for cooking, but I did not use it at all for safety. The trekking poles that I started out the trail with were not the trekking poles that I finished the trail with. They were both Cascade Mountain Tech poles. I went with that brand because they are crazy cheap. I mean, Black Diamond has, you know, great quality poles for $190, but the Cascade Mountain Tech poles are $20 to $30. So to me, I went with those poles because I knew I was going to destroy them anyway on this trail. And I actually destroyed the first pair within the first couple weeks. So the first pair I got were the tent pole styles. So they are like, you can pull them out and collapse them just like tent poles. And like I mentioned, those poles, both of them broke on San Jacinto. Post-holing and self-arresting on that mountain, they snapped at the joints, and I ended up having like half trekking poles, like just little stubs, for another week until I could get a replacement pair sent to the town of Big Bear. The replacement pair that I chose, again, the same brand, but I just chose a different locking mechanism. So these are the more traditional like latch style. I find they're a lot more sturdy, a lot more like well constructed. So I'll be sticking with the latch style in the future. My trekking poles actually did wear down. The second pair did wear down by the time I reached Canada. So there's no more of that carbide bit on the top of, or on the bottom of the poles. So I'll be getting either new tips or new poles. But they did their job for $25. So if I were to go on another through hike, I'll be using the same set of poles, just a new version of them. I did carry topographical maps in the beginning until I felt more comfortable with gut hook and navigating in the backcountry. And even then, I still carried my topographical maps whenever I was in snow. So anytime that the trail was covered by snow, I made sure to have the topographical maps with me at that point. So I had the brand new Nat Geo PCT series that just came out in 2020. They're fantastic maps. They're kind of funky because they're actually backwards. So they would be more convenient if you were a southbound hiker, but they work perfectly fine. And they have enough detail that you can find bailout points if you need to, and you can find enough things that you can orient yourself to find where you're going or where you are. Now, again, if I'm not doing snow travel and I have gut hook, I'm not going to be carrying those maps in the future. But I would encourage you to do what you're comfortable with it's never a bad idea to spend a little extra weight and money and carry a good set of topographical maps, even if you're not doing snow travel. Because if something goes wrong, you're going to be glad that you have those with you, but you're also going to be glad that you know how to orienteer. So if you don't know how to use an orienteering compass and topographical maps, take a class at your local REI, watch some YouTube videos, and make sure you know how to use those before you go into the backcountry with them. The compass that I used was the Suunto leader compass. It worked great. I'll stick with the same compass in the future. And then two last things that I picked up on the trail was a set of earplugs. People tend to snore on the trail, so if you're sleeping around other thru hikers, or especially in hostels, pick yourself up a pair of cheap earplugs. It also helps with the sound of those Thermarest inflatable pads that sound like potato chip bags. Honestly, I used it more for like peace of mind at night. In the beginning, I was hearing like twigs snap and things rustle in the bushes, and I assumed that it was like mountain lions coming to eat me, which it never was and almost never will be. It's usually just squirrels that sound really big in the dead of the night. So put those earplugs in and sleep peacefully, unaware of whatever critters are moving around you in the middle of the night. And then the last thing that I picked up, like I think halfway through the desert section in Big Bear, was a sit pad. So it's just a really small, lightweight, closed cell foam, like accordion style pad. I found it in a hiker box. I didn't think I would need one like when I started the trail, but it's just a nice to have thing. Call it a luxury item, whatever you want. But especially if it's raining or it's snowing, it's nice not to sit like on wet surfaces or on snow or in mud. So for the Sierras, I found myself using it a lot. And also in the beginning of the trail, when it was still winter in the desert, I found myself using it a lot once I picked one up. But that's gonna wrap up my miscellaneous section of gear. And that's going to be the final section for my gear review from my 2020 thru hike of the Pacific Crest Trail. Again, all of that information is going to be in my lighter pack page, which is in the description of this video below. And if you have any comments, questions, feel free to type them in and I'll make sure to respond to you all. But moving forward, this isn't going to be the end of Radish. I've moved out here to Portland, Oregon now, so I'm sandwiched right between the Cascade range, which I've come to know and love quite well, and the coastal range. So there's going to be a lot for me to be exploring up here. This winter, I plan on getting into snowshoeing and mountaineering. I'm planning a summit of Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams for the spring, and I'll be vlogging all those adventures in the Pacific Northwest and posting them right here to my page. So make sure to keep following along and press subscribe so you can get those notifications when I do post new videos going forward. And I'll be seeing you all in the future. So until then, happy trails.